I'd be curious for your thoughts on this, just around. So I think, and this is kind of tying back in directly to gap years, but I think when you're at school, you have a very unique relationship to time because you've kind of lived in the system of school, which has like a you go to school term one, term two, term three, term four. You have these holidays. It's all very set, and you go to school at whatever it is, 8:30 in the morning. You have lunchtime at this time, and you finish at the end of the day. And I know that that was a massive shift for me of like this idea of time of then say taking a gap year where I didn't have that structure of time anymore. If I had to be in certain places at a certain time, or I was doing these activities for 10 weeks and then I'd have a break. And I know I've noticed just through some particularly kind of like young 20, kind of like early 20-year-olds of this real rushing, like a real trying to get ahead. And I mean, it makes sense when you look at the context of what's happened in the last few years in particular, and probably the generation they've been raised by, but a real interesting relationship with time of how can I get to this goal as fast as possible. And as much as I think it can be a positive thing, it also alarms me a little bit because I think that's something I've had to really get used to of like, you got to chill out a bit because it's only when you chill out that I think you can really start to get clear on those ideas that are your own and what you actually want. And if you're kind of constantly rushing to get to that job, to decide on that thing, to do all this sort of stuff, I think you actually miss out on the beauty of the first even 10 years after school when there are so many opportunities outside of your career to grow as a person, to have fun, to learn about the world. And to me, that's been the stuff that's been most beneficial to my career, as opposed to what I've specifically done in my career, if that makes sense. Because it's made me so much clearer on the kind of life that I want. Whereas I think you can do a lot of that in jobs, but I just don't think it compares to like what are you filling that time with outside of work?
Yeah, I love that. We when we look at this rushing and this rat race and this kind of like American dream, the harder you go, the more you work, the faster you get there, the more successful, happy, whatever you're going to be. And same with you, that it's a scary place. And I always will ask people, what are you rushing towards? Like what are you trying to get to? Why do you need to go fast to get there? And they often don't have an answer for that because is it to get a job so you can have a 9 to 5? Is it to get a paycheck? Is it to get to retirement like 40, 50 years from now? Um, there's just this yearning to check the boxes as fast as I can, but without actually being able to articulate why.
Mm,
And I think that is this hive mind, the kind of following the lemmings. Everybody's doing it. We are competing against each other. We're competing against ourselves. We're competing for less spaces, less jobs. There's a sense of urgency there, and progressing grade to grade to grade to grade leaves a lot of students with the notion that I need to continue taking one
mm,
step forward every year. Every September, I need to take a step forward. I need to take a step forward. And I need to be on this predetermined step forward because I've never been given the opportunity to make decisions for myself. I've just followed somebody else's path. And I think that's the gift that we can give people by encouraging them to take gap years or to experiment with their careers is that opportunity to learn how to think for yourself, the
mm,
opportunity to feel that you have a sense of agency in your life, that nothing is predetermined. You are not the victim of circumstance. You are not the victim of the education system, that you have power to make decisions that are going to be in your favor, to live the life that you want to lead. And I don't think that message is coming across through curriculum. I don't think it's coming across through a lot of like family value systems. And I think that's a really missing piece about what it is to be human is having that control over your life and the agency and the ability to determine your next steps.
It's a bit of like a like almost like a franticness, like of a, oh no, if I don't do this, I'll miss out. And sometimes I
Mhm.
think, and this is just me completely like trying to create a theory around this, but I think if you look at probably the parents as well, the busyness, the rushing,
Mhm.
the not having enough time, I think with a backdrop of that for a young person, you're naturally just picking that up of like, I've got to be busy even. I've got to be, if I'm sitting down, that's not a productive use of my time. So I
Mhm.
think it's like this whole like combination of things. But the I think this is one of the most ironic things about gap years is it's actually one of the things that I think could get you furthest in your career and get you ahead faster is taking a gap year. But I don't know if people really appreciate that or the reason why that is so. And I think that from a career perspective, we kind of think too much about what someone else is going to think of us in our career, of like what
Mhm.
promotion, what opportunity are we going to get that somebody else is going to give me. But the funny thing is about careers is it's actually about getting clearer on what you want and where you thrive. They're kind of two things that I think are really important. And if you're talking about wanting to get ahead, the sooner you truly get clear on those things is actually when you can start accelerating your career and have that progression. Because if you're constantly looking for how can I get ahead, as in how can I get that next promotion, how can someone else give that to me, your chances are you're trying to get ahead at a career that you may not even want. Which means then if you in 10 years' time get to a point where you're like, I'm not enjoying this anymore, I don't want to do it, guess what you're going to feel like? You're going to feel like you're back at square one.
Mhm.
And you're going to feel like for all that progress I've made, I've now got to start again. And you do never start again in your career. You can always take everything you've done with you. But I think that that's something that we don't really come back to with careers of it's not about someone else. It's not about the external, the validation of the jobs that you're getting. It's actually around how aligned do you feel with your career. That to me is true progress in a career.
I love that. That gives me all like the warm fuzzies and the tingles, and that's what I want people to be striving for in such a fast-paced, busy world where busyness is this badge of honor. And we miss
Mm,
out on being human. We miss out on relationships. We miss out on joy. We miss out on fun. We miss out on nature. We miss out on so many pieces that are truly good for our bodies, minds, and souls for the sake of busyness and kind of moving through the rat race, which I think is just
mm.
so fascinating.